We have a really special episode today. I'm here with Isaac Perdomo. He is an automation expert for accounting firms. He works specifically with all sorts of platforms such as TaxDome, Carbon, Zero, QuickBooks, and he helps firms automate their practices with these cool softwares nowadays. So I'm so excited to have him here and talk a little bit about something we don't hear a lot about in school as accounting students, but something that's incredibly important moving forward for small accounting firms, which is automation. So, Isaac, so excited to have you here. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm an honor. It's an honor to be here. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, do you want to give us a little intro? Talk a little bit about your consulting business, what you do for accounting firms, and maybe how you even got into that. I know that you've been doing automation for a long time, but why did you choose to get in and start helping accounting firms?
Yeah, happy to get into that. So what we do is effectively helping firms to streamline their processes and giving them the tools, the training, and the support they need to leverage software tools, automation, and AI to their advantage. As to how I got started with automation, of course, from a very young age, I kind of studied engineering. Actually, I've always been like a technical guy. I always enjoy computers and cell phones and technology as a whole. Studied engineering in school, actually mechanical engineering, and then realized that many of the job opportunities in that career were just not really for me. For one reason or another, I really wanted to work like in the digital world, in the digital space. So that led me to actually started working in an agency that served software companies, and that's where I got my feet wet into all of these software tools that are used for marketing, for selling, for accounting, and really to manage a business online. And then from there, it evolved into kind of my own practice over time. As to why accounting firms, that's a long story, but my dad was an accountant actually, and we are just betting that these new tools, these local tools, automation and AI, it's going to be incredibly impactful for the accounting profession as a whole. I like to be in a space where I know I'm needed. So that's kind of like a big part of why we decided to, focus on accounting specifically.
Well, we definitely need it. The accounting industry as a whole has been stuck kind of in the dinosaur age for a while now, right? Just a few months ago,
Yeah.
I went and walked into all of the accounting firms in my local city looking for work, and every single one of them, it was like giant towers of paper on every single desk. And it blows me away, right? That the fact that accounting firms still to this day are just so loaded up with paper when there's so many amazing tools that they can use to automate and save money and save time.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many firms out there that really either don't know or don't pay attention to the digital tools available today. But to your point, like there's really no good reason to be working with paper anymore in 2024. So that's what we're hoping to make a dent in and bring awareness to a lot of those firms.
I love it. I love it. Let's get into some of the tools that you work with. I'm in a unique situation that I work at a very forward-thinking accounting firm now. We're using a lot of the tools that you work with your clients on, and I want to help students get a little bit more familiar with some of these platforms so that they can go looking for them as they start to choose what firms they want to work at. I know specifically on your LinkedIn page, it shows, I think it's six, no, it's seven main softwares that you work with. So you work with Gusto, Sage, Zero, QuickBooks, TaxDome, Carbon, and Ignition. Am I right on those?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because actually we have that kind of circle of apps as a representation of what a typical engagement looks like.
Oh, okay.
You'll notice that Zapier is at the center, and it's for a reason. Our role is typically coming to a firm and not only helping them implement a particular app if they want to, if they need help there, but also integrated a lot of their apps together. I don't know if this has happened in in the firm you're in, but what usually happens, especially for smaller firms, it's more effective to solve individual problems in the business with a particular software tool. And what happens as the firm grows is that they have one tool for this, one tool for that, one tool for the work, one tool for the clients, one tool for the, to store the files. And those don't always talk to one another necessarily. So a big part of what we do is really helping them connect those together when it makes sense. And often also building custom solutions if required to solve specific business needs that maybe some of the software tools for one reason or another are not like a fit or not tailored specifically to them. But to your point, we have worked with those tools in the from the perspective of integrating them, but our bread and butter is usually tools like Zapier. There are other tools that are in like the low code world that help us integrate apps and also create these custom applications as well.
Okay, so I like that even more. Um, I'm a huge fan of Zapier. I'm in no means a master at it, right? Um, but let's talk a little bit about that. So you mentioned how these smaller firms will use all these different softwares to kind of fit their needs, right? Like for example, the firm I work at, we're mostly on Zero. We love Zero, Go Blue, and we have all these other tools that work around it, right? So our new practice management
Yes.
system is TaxDome. We were using Carbon before. We also use Gusto. We love Gusto for payroll. We use we have used Ignition in the past. We're not currently using Ignition. Just there's all these tools that you like almost Frankenstein together, right? The big firms
Yeah.
have enough money to code their own programs and build their own software that does all of this stuff together, right? Or they use a platform.
Yes.
They use platforms made by Oracle or really expensive platforms that just wouldn't fit the needs of these smaller firms. But these smaller firms, like you said, they take all these little pieces, even though some of these softwares say they can do everything, you really only use them for one or two things and then you combine them all together. Well, you have to tie all that together with something, right? And that's what you explained as Zapier. So explain how
Yes.
Zapier is powerful. And I've almost had the idea too that students could get practice using Zapier in their studies and automating small things in their life. Have you ever seen that? And are there ways that students could start to get practice with Zapier even before they get into the accounting stuff?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you look back like 40 years ago, where spreadsheets became a thing, really that sort of like was a development that helped any profession really, but especially the accounting and finance profession, because they're very often having to deal with data and transforming data in many ways. So I feel like, low code and AI and automation will be in a decade from now what kind of spreadsheets were back then, where if you don't know how to use them, I mean, you can't do the job. Um, kind of. So I think like for a student that's currently going through an accounting degree, I would definitely recommend you start playing with these tools. Good thing is most of them have free trials that you can just get started playing with. If you have a job,
Cha-ching.
you'll probably recognize things you do. It's that's where always a good starting point. Kind of scratch your own itch and start to see if there's anything that you have to do on a regular basis that you can automate and keep going from there.
So could you explain what low code is and how it's maybe different from traditional coding?
Yes, I'm happy to get into that. So if you look at sort of like the history of programming, it started with zeros and ones. Like this was very the way a computer communicated was very different from how a human communicated. And we've been trying to bridge that gap for decades. So languages have come up that are always a little easier and look more like um, natural language. So if you look at, I don't know, SQL or Python, you'll probably recognize as you read it, they say like select from whatever, or where it has like words that you would identify. Um, as that has evolved, of course, there's been a lot of tools now coming to the market where they are visual in nature. As a result, you can build apps, you can build websites, you can build automations in a visual environment where you don't really need to know how to code for that. And even if we look at AI as an example, which is like the ultimate, the latest development of kind of this, at least as I see it, part of the low code world as well, we are sort of like getting to the point where the way a human communicates and a computer understands, it's the same. Now you can just talk to the computer and we'll do whatever you want. So that's kind of how I see programming has evolved over time to the point that now I think I wouldn't even call it that. It's just development, and everyone can develop if they are sort of like industry experts. If they're accountants, they're the ones doing the job. They'll probably be the ones that are most suited and most qualified to solve their own problems by themselves, as opposed to having to rely on developers to solve their needs.
Yeah. And that's essentially what Zapier does for people, right? Is you can go in and build what they call zaps that take the APIs of different apps, connect them so that you can swap information every time that something inside the app happens without having to go and manually do it yourself, correct?
Exactly. That's kind of how it started. SAPs is, of course, still the most powerful and used feature of Zapier, where, to your point, you are effectively having a series of commands based on certain conditions. So, to your point, if the client accepted the proposal in Ignition, go ahead and create the task on Carbon. If the client sends us an email with this, with this attachment, upload it to the Google Drive or to their OneDrive folder, whatever it might be. You can have an unlimited set of conditions for the computer to do what you want without you having to, touch anything. Um, but over time, Zapier has also started introducing other products like interfaces, chatbots, tables, that allow you to not only build automations but also build applications. That's sort of like the long-term vision of many of these tools. You can start with the automation side of things, as it's often kind of the easiest to understand and can get you started quickly. But long term, all these tools are really development platforms for you to build any business applications that you want. So it's pretty exciting.
So this is kind of off the beaten path of where I wanted to go with the podcast. This next question I have for you, but I really want to ask it. So are you essentially saying that the future of development and coding is that these it'll be so easy to communicate with the computer for even just a regular person that everybody will be able to make custom apps for themselves essentially?
That's the future, really. Um, of course, we don't want to reinvent the wheel either. It's not like if there's an app that already exists, like say an accounting software, it's not like we necessarily have the need to build another accounting software for a company, but we could if we wanted to. It's more helpful though for like more individual and smaller custom needs that maybe the software companies will not care to build for you. Actually, I just wrote a post the other day talking about this problem that a lot of tax firms have. I don't know if your firm focuses heavily on taxes, but in the tax season, every client's kind of like reaching out to know what their status of their return. And that's where you think, well, what if we had a simple, status tracker that allowed people to go into our website and see what's the status of their return at any given time, and we could connect that to Carbon or Taxdome or other tools, so that as our team sort of like updates that status, then the client will be able to see that reflected on their side. That's an example of something that actually some tools have. Taxum introduced something similar relatively recently,
Just this last
but
month, yeah.
there's yeah, but that's an example of like something that you might not necessarily have, or you might want to customize to what the tool has by default, and you were able to, thanks to log.
I love that. That's so cool. So when you sit down with a brand new client, let's say like I'm your brand new client, I'm a small accounting firm. I want to start to automate my practice. What are kind of the first steps you guys go through with the firm to get them moving along this path, and then what do you guys work on after that?
It's timely you asked this question because it's something I've been thinking about a lot, trying to have a more clear path of what it is that we do. Because up until the last few months, it's been very custom. So kind of depending on the need of the client, we might just prescribe a particular thing. But here's what we've noticed after working with over 70 firms and seeing patterns. We feel like the best play to there are four pieces that we kind of like to go through and make sure they're in place. One, it's the way they manage their work. Two, is the way they manage their clients. Three, it's kind of like optimizing processes. And four, it's the way they manage their data. So I'll walk you through at a high level what each one kind of like means. In a firm, of course, there are a number of things that need to get done for sometimes hundreds of clients. And there's just no way you're going to keep everything on your head. Unfortunately, there are still people, keeping track of the work that needs to get done in spreadsheets or paper. To your point earlier, but what we found that first and foremost, firms will gain a lot of value from first and foremost, kind of like laying out and picking a tool to manage their work. To your point, looks like your firm settled on Taxstone. That's kind of like to us really the core and the heart of the firm because every other tool you pick will often depend on that one. So that's usually where we like to start. Asking the question, do you already have a place to manage your work and are you happy with that particular tool? There's a lot of automations that can like happen within that because now if you have a series of steps, you can start to say, okay, when we do this particular work, we want to update the client or we want to update the reviewer that has to review this particular piece of work. You can start putting systems in place to streamline the process a lot more. So that's kind of like part one, the work. Part two, it's managing your clients. Some clients, I don't know if this is the case in your firm, but they decide to limit the options of communication through something like a portal, which Taxstone has. Other firms, however, want to allow some flexibility for the client to communicate with them. So they might be managing multiple channels, right? They might be getting emails, text messages, phone calls, and on and on. So what we found as a second piece, it's very important to have a system to keep track and address all client communications and make sure that those don't fall through the cracks either and they're not in your head. Then from there, those are really the kind of like the two most important ones. Often managing clients also means sort of like managing sales opportunities because very often, you know, maybe clients need to upgrade to a higher level of service and you want to make sure you're tracking you have a way to know that that's the case and you can sort of like follow up. But those are like the two biggest pieces. Then process optimization, really that's a big bucket to just like looking at the processes one by one and trying to see if there's anything that can be automated or not. And then typically a little further down the road as the firm grows, it also starts to become important to manage their data and have like one source of truth to manage their contact information. Because what often happens is that now you have 7 different tools and each one has different information about a particular client. You're not really sure
Yeah.
where's the current truth. That happens a lot. And also as it relates to their metrics internally, maybe they have, they invoice their clients via QuickBooks, but they keep track of their time in another tool. So if they wanted to kind of like bring back all the data into one place, that's kind of what we can kind of help them at that point. So again, it's like how they manage their work, how they manage their clients, how they manage their data, which includes client information and their metrics. And then it's just a continuous process of optimization to continue streamlining and remove or automate anything that can be automated. It's a long answer, but I hope that gives you a little bit of perspective of what are like the biggest pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, it to me it's so much fun because so before I really dug deep into accounting, I was really being pulled by the operations management side of business. I loved learning about Lean Six
Interesting.
Sigma and you know, lean optimization and always, improving your processes. Um, so like the first internship I ever did in school, I was a operations supervisor at a distribution center for the summer and worked with like 100 employees on a huge production floor with 14 lines of production constantly going. And I'm always just the little hamster wheel in my head is always going and trying to see, okay, how can we speed that up there? How can we make that person's job easier? And I realized when I started working at this firm in accounting, it's the same exact way in accounting. There's always so many little things here
Yeah.
and there that you can take, clean up, and really make your processes better, which is why I think it's so cool what you and your company are doing for these small firms and helping them develop and improve these processes. So getting back a little bit to the student side of things, do you have any recommendations for how students could even start this? Like, could I build a custom Zap that connects my school email to my personal email or like something like that? Like, do you have any personal examples of how you've used Zapier that have kind of automated your personal life?
Oh, my personal life. A couple of examples come to mind, and hopefully this is not. But yeah, I can think of a couple of things. Reminders are always useful. If there's anything you want to remind yourself of, setting up an automation to remind yourself. To your point, forwarding from one email to another, that's something else that could be done. I would encourage students to also play with like either whether it's their assignments or work they have to do, sort of like automating things around spreadsheets, playing with macros. Both Excel and Google Sheets have sort of like a development environment, like Google Apps Script, and where they can kind of like automate certain things. That's something that's very useful as well. I've personally, and this might be interesting to mention, the first automation project for me was actually a personal project where I wanted to build a bot that bought shares for me automatically. It's like a trading bot. I since sort of like not really using it at this point, but it really got me interested in learning how to, automate trades and to like at that intersection of development and finance and money. I think it taught me a lot. So yeah, those are a couple of examples in my personal life that kind of come to mind.
That is so cool. I think I think that's awesome. Um you could I mean, and that even gets the hamster wheel turning for me, right? Like you could make an automation that takes $100 from your paycheck every single pay stub you get and puts it right into the stock market, or maybe uploads it to your broker so that you can go and maybe you already have stocks picked out you're going to buy. But that is, oh, I that's so cool. So was it pretty successful, or did did it kind of flop?
It was for a while. It was for a while. It then flopped, candidly. And I think it was more, at least at the time, it was. I built two bots actually. One was like trading cryptos. Another one's like trading stocks. Um, but at the time, I was a young guy. I thought I was gonna beat the market. Ever since I was like, you know what? I'd rather not lose money, so I'm going to invest my money in the S&P and not bother. But it was a project that was fruitful for me in many ways, just because hey, I got to learn the skill and just get my feet wet with automation at the time.
Well, and I think that's an incredibly important lesson for students, right? Is that you don't have to just think about these in a work or an accounting context to learn them. Like, so I know how to code in Python and in SQL. I don't use it as much as I would like to, but some of the best ways that I first learned how to do that was just building personal projects. Like I built in a Python script. I think that's what you call it. I It's been a couple years, so I forget. But I built a Python script that you could essentially enter in the top 25 college football teams, and it would run a tournament, and based on different stats that you uploaded into the script, it would determine who would win each game until you got a champion. And that was really fun for me. But it didn't have anything to do with, school or anything, right? It was just a personal kind of fun project for me. So I love that you took this skill set you wanted to build, and you did something that you enjoyed and was exciting for you. I think students can remember that as well and start to get practice with these softwares while still doing things that, really excite them.
Yeah, and candidly, that's where you learn the most when you're excited about something. Sometimes where you're not even compensated by it, but you just get to get your hands wet and try things out.
I love it. I love it. Well, I've really enjoyed the time with you here, Isaac. I always like to end with one question. We specifically focus on young accounting students and young accounting professionals. And I know you've already mentioned the free trials that students can go and do to learn some of these softwares. They can start practicing with Zapier today. Start learning how to short code and these different things in their personal life. Do you have any other specific advice? Doesn't even have to be to automation. It can be anything, right? But do you have maybe one piece of advice that you would give to young accounting professionals, especially where you mentioned as well that it seems like there's just this immense opportunity coming in the accounting profession right now?
General advice here, but I would definitely suggest you stay up to date with technology as a whole. I think for young professionals, it comes a little bit more natural than say our older generation for obvious reasons. We've been sort of like we've evolved and grown in this age, in digital age and era, so it comes a little bit more naturally to us. I've definitely encouraged them to stay up to date with all those trends and read the news, and if there's something that piques your curiosity, you explore further. And really, that's how I've learned too. Just like there's this thing, I have this problem. There's this tool I heard about. Let me try it out, and before you know, you'll be a master.
That's awesome. That's great. Great insight. Isaac, thank you so much. I love your energy, your passion for automation. Love what you're putting out on LinkedIn and everything you're doing to help push the accounting industry forward. It's such an exciting time because of people like you that are bringing new ideas and new things into the profession and making it a better place. So I really appreciate that. Where's the best place that students can go and find your content, find you, and if there's any accounting firm owners out there, where can they find you and start to look for your services?
Yeah, we are active on LinkedIn. So if you just look for Isaac Perdomo, Isaac Opzer, you'll find me. That's Opzer. Well, we have our website at opzer.co. So opzer.co. So people can check us out there to see some of the people and some of the other firms we work with in case anyone's interested in getting in touch. And although we're not super active yet, we're getting into YouTube, which I think is going to be much more easy to communicate some of the things we do and share and tutorials and have like visual and video content for people in the space.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, Isaac, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and sharing your immense automation knowledge with us, and look forward to keeping in touch with you. And, who knows, maybe we'll have you on for another episode here in a couple years when the automation technology's completely changed all over again.
Yeah, definitely. It's an ever moving target. So we're trying to keep up, and even we sometimes can't. So definitely appreciate the opportunity. I must say, you are incredibly mature for your age, and I appreciate you bringing me on here. Love your questions and your thoughtful responses as well. So, couldn't be happier with the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Isaac. That means a lot. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll catch you guys next week.